A joyful Thursday afternoon to all. I am William Theo and this is PTV News Now. On the second to the last day of 2024, we kick off this afternoon's stories with today's big event. The signing of the 2025 General Appropriations Bill or National Budget in the amount of 6.326 trillion pesos. True to his word, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., after nearly 3 weeks of poring over every single line item on the voluminous stacks of the 2025 national budget with his budget review team like a fine-tooth comb, inked the proposed budget into law earlier today. The final version of the 2025 General Appropriations Act the President inked contained vetoed line items to the tune of 194 billion pesos, which the President and his team of financial advisors and economic managers deemed inconsistent with the objectives of the President's working agenda. But the controversial 26 billion allocation for the Ayuda for the Kapos Ang Kita program or AKAP, which has drawn pushback from many quarters in and out of the government, was given a pass, but on a conditional implementation arrangement. Budget Secretary Amena Pangandaman, in a presser following the ceremony, said that while the 26 billion peso funding stays in place, the money will only be dispersed once the guidelines to the program are finalized and fleshed out and the requirements for the concerned government agencies are met. AKAP provides financial assistance to minimum wage earners and those classified as near poor. He is the longest-lived president in the history of the United States. Number 39, though just a single-term president whose political achievements could have been much better with 4 more years, is in by far, without a doubt, the best ex-president who accomplished so much after his term than any other before or after him. VOA's Kane Faribault takes a look at President Carter's legacy of service and humanitarian work.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear.
When Jimmy Carter took the oath of office on January 20th, 1977, he promised a government as good as its people.
There can be no nobler nor more ambitious task for America to undertake on this day of a new beginning than to help shape a just and peaceful world.
A world he continued to shape beyond his single term in the White House, becoming a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, heading the global nonprofit, the Carter Center, whose mission is waging peace, fighting disease, and building hope.
I look upon the Carter Center work as an extension of what I try to do as president.
Carter was born in Plains, Georgia in 1924. He graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1946, serving as a submarine officer before returning to Plains in 1953 to run the family farm in the wake of his father's death. Carter entered politics during the civil rights movement of the 1960s, serving 2 terms as a Georgia legislator before becoming the state's governor in 1971.
I say to you quite frankly that the time for racial discrimination is over.
Carter went from being an unknown Southern governor in 1971 to the winning presidential candidate in 1976, narrowly defeating Republican Gerald Ford. Mediating the 1979 Camp David Accords and the eventual peace treaty between Egypt and Israel was the pinnacle of Carter's presidency.
There had been 4 wars between Arabs and Israelis in the previous 25 years, with the Egyptians and the leadership supported by the Soviet Union. They were the only country that could really challenge Israel militarily.
Carter also negotiated a treaty returning control of the Panama Canal to Panama and established full diplomatic ties with the People's Republic of China. But the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran would change the course of his presidency. Protests led by Shiite clerics toppled the U.S.-backed Shah, who fled the country. Militants later stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, taking 66 Americans hostage. In late November of that year, 13 hostages were released. In April 1980, Carter authorized a military operation to free the remaining hostages. It failed, and 8 U.S. service members died. Carter also faced challenges at home. Inflation and rising unemployment hobbled the economy, contributing to his 1980 election defeat to Republican Ronald Reagan. On January 20th, 1981, Reagan's inauguration day, Iran finally freed the American hostages. Carter, defeated and depressed, returned to Plains to plan his presidential library.
I envisioned it to be a tiny thing where I would have an office and some nice buildings in Atlanta.
It became much more. A well-known global nonprofit, the Carter Center has monitored over 100 elections and mediated disputes ranging from a nuclear standoff with North Korea in 1994 to a peace agreement between Uganda and Sudan. The center also promotes health and fights illness in the poorest parts of the planet. Eradicating guinea worm disease has been a primary goal.
There's only been one disease in the history of humankind ever eradicated, and that was smallpox, more than 30 years ago. So guinea worm is going to soon be the second disease in history to be wiped off the face of the earth.
Carter's work helping humanity led to Oslo, Norway in 2002, where he accepted the Nobel Peace Prize.
When I won the Nobel Peace Prize, for instance, it was because of the work of the Carter Center. So I would be perfectly satisfied to have a legacy based on peace and human rights. I mean, who would?
Carter led an active life into his 90s, surviving brain cancer in 2015. But declining health and the 2020 global coronavirus pandemic kept him confined to his hometown of Plains in his final years. In one of his last public media appearances, Carter shared with VOA his hopes for the future.
Well, I would like to see the United States in the future strive to be the #1 champion in the world of peace and human rights and environmental equality, and I would say treating everybody equal. If we could do that, we'd have a real superpower in the country that I love very much.
Carter lived the longest of any occupant of the White House, and his 76-year marriage to wife Rosalind is the longest of any president and first lady. Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Plains, Georgia.
And that's all she wrote for this afternoon's program. Join us anew for this evening's batch of breaking stories, and always keep it here for news you can count on. I am William Theo, and thank you for watching PTV News Now.